Hey everybody, it's Dan at Go Live. Today we're going to be talking about all things CSU, which is crazy because knowing what I know about it, it's one of the most underrated school systems, period. That's not just true for California, but I think true for the entire nation, if not the entire world. And I really mean that. And today I'm really excited to have a guest with me. He's one of my close friends all the way back from junior high, went to high school together and still are super close. His name's Sevey. And so looking forward to that chat. But before we get started, definitely like, subscribe, post any kind of comments you want, maybe requesting some new videos. We're trying to put out good content all the time. So I really do appreciate the support. But yeah, especially amidst with COVID here, it's, a lot of people are interested in going to school somewhat closer to home sometimes, or maybe just finding the cheaper solution. CSUs, it's no joke. So would like to invite Sevey to join the podcast and get this party started. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Long time no see. Not really.
Yep. It's been a while. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Glad to have you on. Really do appreciate your time. And, as someone who grew up in the Bay, I think a lot of people are going to benefit from, the wisdom that you have to share today. And I know wisdom is something that you and I have been talking about since high school during our days at American and maybe even before that. So let's get into it. I mean, before I let you talk, I guess I'll do a little bit of talking for you. Sevey is pretty much one of the coolest people I know, one of the wisest people I know. We've been talking things about family philosophy, which, funny thing, they start with a similar sounding letter sequence, if you will. Maybe they are the same for a long time. And, while, he went to San Jose State, I've always been curious about what his experience was, because it seemed like out of all of my friends, he had one of the most well-rounded and robust experiences. Now, something that he probably would disagree with, but from doing judo, even to this day, which really a lot of that started, I think, around that time, to studying business, originally majoring in something else, which is something we'll talk about later today as well. So changing majors is a question that I get a lot about. You just seemed like you had a decently fair experience with it all, and I think that's the reason why you're here. I mean, I think you have a lot of wisdom to give to a lot of students who are considering the same system, whether it's San Jose State, SDSU, Cal Poly, Pomona, or SLO. We'll get into it. But before we do, I mean, just tell us a little bit about yourself,
So I guess I'll start with, me. I graduated from San Jose State. It's been a minute. I think graduated 2012 with an accounting degree, business accounting degree, and then a minor in philosophy, which we'll talk about, further down the road. And then, I graduated. Now I work at Safeway Albertsons Corporate, where I help sell alcohol for a living. So, a very interesting gig right now. During COVID times, I suggest everyone to drink responsibly.
Yeah, definitely true for all the adults out there who are of legal drinking age. But good point. It is COVID, and I do hope anybody who's tuning in, is staying safe, taking the right precautions. We'll get through it. We'll get through it together.
We'll get through it together, fellas, boys and girls.
So let's get into it. Let's rewind a little bit. Walk us back through high school. So you're a senior, like a lot of our seniors are today, right? Let's say it's September or October, right? College apps are due kind of soon, in about a month or two. What was going through your mind? Did you know you were going to study business? Is that even what you majored in? Did you know you were going to go to state, San Jose State, or were you trying to go somewhere else? I mean, walk us through that mindset. What were you going through?
So, I think if I remember correctly, in high school, you start thinking about college in your junior year, right? When you start prepping for SATs, starts thinking about, which school to go to, et cetera, et cetera. And so, come along senior year, and I applied to all the schools I thought about applying to, UCs and states. I didn't apply to out of state, mostly within California. And so, I applied not thinking about which school I actually really want to go to. I just thought, just get to a school and that's all that mattered. And so, yeah, I just applied and just that's it. That's what it is. And then if I sounds to say God accepted me, and then that was it.
Which is funny because I think that's contrary to a good percentage of the population today, right? They start thinking about college in like the 3rd grade or 4th grade, right? I remember substitute teaching at Arnwood, where I went to school, and I think I was substituting a 3rd grade classroom, and when I asked some people what their dreams were, a lot of kids jumped up with their hands super high, and they're like, "I want to go to Stanford." I'm like, "You're in 3rd grade, man."
I mean, if they're a prodigy, I mean, hey, go right ahead, man. Hey, the world is yours.
Yeah. So, and I think part of this reason that you had to some degree kind of a more carefree attitude on things as well. You had different priorities, right? I mean, family has always been center and core to you. But I think you also, if I'm not mistaken, you also declared a major that you didn't end up studying through all of college, right?
Right. So when I applied to San Jose State, well, more like a backtrack. Let's backtrack a little bit. So one of my favorite things I love to study when I'm, during school, and they don't teach us about school, it's actually philosophy. Philosophy is one of my favorite things to study and to talk about, to read about, to listen about when I'm on my free time, listen on podcasts or going through YouTube videos. And I love philosophy. I love it. It's one of the things I love studying since I was 14. And so that's why I wanted to major in. And so when I applied to San Jose State, I just put philosophy and just left it at that. And
and your parents didn't stop you from doing that, but they did change your thought process, though, right? When you got in,
right. And so being an Asian typical and Asian household, you got Asian parents always telling you, what are you gonna do with philosophy? I mean, you're gonna be broke. You're not gonna do anything with it. What are you gonna become, a teacher? All teachers are broke. You're not gonna be successful, right? And so and that's what happened. I ended up changing my major.
Mm-hmm. And
even though I applied to say with philosophy, I ended up changing my major along the way.
Right. And how easy or hard was that? Because a lot of people wonder how easy or hard it is to change your major. In fact, there's this huge fear, right, in the general world that, you can't change your major that easily. I mean, if you were to rate it on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being like incredibly difficult, 0 being just no problem. I mean, what would you rate it in terms of changing from philosophy to business?
I think that depends on timing. So I wouldn't put it on the scale. I would put it more on that scale would be in effect on timing, right? If you did it in your 3rd year in college, that might be an issue because you're already starting to take your prerequisite classes or your requisite classes, for your major. If you did it during your freshman or maybe your 2nd year in college, it should be relatively easy because at the time you'll be just taking your general ed courses anyways, right? Your random classes like communications, biology, I don't know,
English, math,
I don't know, stuff that just general ed that you end up having taken no matter what.
So when did you change your major?
I changed my major in my 2nd semester, I want to say.
Got it. And so rate it. How easy was it? 0 to 10?
So easy. It's not even like
0?
Yeah, it was really easy. Like probably.
Yeah.
Like 0 to 10, as in 0 was like hardest, or 10 was.
No, 0 is really easy.
Oh, probably a 0.
Yeah. And that's what I like to echo to a lot of my students who are unsure, right? Like, for instance, a lot of our students want to study something like, I don't know, call it creative writing or psychology, but they're being pressured to do something more pragmatic, like the STEM subjects, which are largely popular here in the Bay Area. And so, whatever the reason may be, students, whether they're thinking about going in for a major that's easier so that they can get in easier, right? Like you mentioned earlier, since you applied as a philosophy major, it just made your life a little bit easier to get into San Jose State. Or if just a student is just genuinely interested in something that is not in line with what their parents want them to do, they tend to go for these majors and then with this idea that, okay, maybe I'll switch my major later, right? So, I've been telling pretty much everybody that it's not as hard as people make it out to be. In fact, when you're in college, it's pretty easy. It's pretty simple. As long as you have the prereqs set to really kind of go forward with it, it's not too bad. But let's talk about your life at San Jose State. I think one of the biggest things that people talk about is like, one, it's like, okay, for one, like some people don't want to go to CSU because it's too close to home, right? When in reality, actually, there are tons of other CSUs that are very far from home, right? Like, for instance, from here, Cal Poly SLO is pretty far. San Diego State's certainly quite far. Cal Poly Pomona, right? There's Northridge, there's Long Beach. I mean, if you're trying to get away, you can get away.
Right.
But, generally, people, when think of CSU here, they think of San Francisco State, San Jose State, Cal State East Bay, right? What was that experience like for you, going to school near home?
So, well, number one, your parents will be bugging the hell out of you. Like, what, when are you coming home? And they're still going to bug you, which is, just any parents are going to do the same thing. But from, going to San Jose State, it's basically a commuter school. A lot of people do commute. You're gonna drive there, or you're gonna live a little bit closer to San Jose. Certain schools may be different, like SLO, right? San Luis Obispo is a little bit different because you can call SLO a college town. I like to think SLO is a college town, really.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, but if this is Bay Area, like San Francisco State or San Jose State or East Bay, those three schools are primarily commuter schools, and that's okay. Like, I have no problem with commuting into school. The 880 traffic sucks, but certain time of day you have to like prep to make sure you hit traffic on time. But other than that, it's fine, right? Yeah,
Well, let's talk about some of those reasons why it's fine. I mean, clearly, and I think I can speak more generally here on behalf of all of our friends who, by the way, we have a collection of friends who've gone to everywhere from Berkeley to Cal Poly SLO to San Jose State, San Francisco State. And I'd say one of the greatest fears about CSUs is there's this prestige thing, right? It's like, oh, UCs are better than CSUs, right? So at all costs, I'll go to UC, even if that means I'll go to Merced, right?
Right.
And then, by the way, no problem, nothing wrong with Merced whatsoever. People's perception, they're thinking prestige, they're thinking UC as an institution is more, reputable than CSU. Right. And in reality, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I can see tangibly right now, being 31 years old, right, just like you, is there really seems to be no difference, right? I mean, when I look at our friends, for instance, half of whom went to UC, actually probably less than half, many of whom went to CSUs, from San Francisco State to SASU, everyone seems to be either making the same amount of money, also in the same level of position, right? Whether it's management here or, director level programming here at Apple. By the way, the Apple programmer came from a CSU. So this prestige thing, right, is I feel like it's way overblown. And I feel like one thing that the CSUs do a really good job of is actually preparing people for work, because that's what they're designed to do. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is like they think UCs are a more prestigious institution, hence it'll be easier to get hired. That's not true, right? To get hired at a company, like there's a reason, for instance, why San Jose State is the #1 feeder to Google. Why? Right. Has nothing to do with US News rankings, has nothing to do with prestige. It's just close. Yep. Right? It's so close that Google's like, why would I go all the way to, say, I don't know, Philadelphia or Boston or wherever, right? We're talking Mountain View headquarters, to hire somebody if I can just find, let's say, that some of the top performers or reliable people from a college that's like right here in our backyard, right? So I think there's something about this idea of pragmatism, right? Especially, by the way, amidst COVID, where people are looking for pragmatic college options that maybe aren't too far from home so that they can stay safe amidst the pandemic and while it gets resolved over the next year or so. Did you feel like you got a decent amount of, I guess you can say, job preparation and maybe even help, finding work afterwards? I mean, what was that experience for you in terms of just the education?
So from an education standpoint, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that I graduated business major in accounting. So that is one different than most UCs. They don't offer that, right? They don't offer accounting degrees. They don't offer finance, or they offer marketing. It's if standing correct.
Few do, very few. Yeah,
very few.
Right. Yeah,
right?
but most of them, they don't. Yeah, like even like when I went to Berkeley business, for instance, we don't have a specialization. You can't even get, like, for instance, what you just said is impossible. At Haas, like, it's just you get a business administration degree, that's it. Right. You can try to specialize in your coursework, but the fact that you have it on your degree is something that I can't do from Haas. which is crazy,
Right.
right? But yeah, you're right. In general, right, a lot of these programs were started off as economics research-based programs.
Exactly.
They weren't
Exactly.
applicable necessarily to work, right, in let's say the real world. They were more so tailored towards research. So was that your experience at San Jose State? Was it more applicable to the real world in that, did you feel like you were prepared to go to work maybe like upon graduation or maybe before that?
So seriously, what they would do is every class is tailored to what you do. So for example, in accounting, they literally will say you have to take these X amount of accounting courses, from tax accounting to you have to at least take 3 courses of regular accounting, beginning and intermediate accounting. Then you have to take other accounting courses as well in order to prep you for that. So it's not like, oh, you're going to take one and that's it. No, they prep you for it. The courses, it will even say, okay, these are live examples of what you have to do on a day-to-day course. I mean, a day-to-day scenario, things like that. Even today, where I work at Safeway Albertsons, I got directors, I got VPs that I'm very close with, that I've worked with before, and a lot of them never even came from a UC. Most of them, I had like one manager I used to work with. She came out of East Bay. Now she's like VP of all general merchandise of all of Northern California Safeway, right? I mean, do you need a UC? Do you need a UC degree in order to achieve that? No, not really, right?
That's a great point. I want to talk about some of that philosophy. I just want to echo this. Recently, I was having lunch. Well, this was actually before COVID, but I remember it like it was yesterday because how many lunches have I had since then? But I was having lunch with a group of people in Palo Alto. We were on university, and it was the first time I met her. She's a friend of a friend, and she was working at Google Legal, actually. And, as an ex-Googler myself, I, naturally was like, just kind of finding out more about her. And she said that she went to UC Berkeley. And she told me that she majored in computer science. And naturally, it begged the question, like, well, why are you working at Google Legal?
Yeah.
Why aren't you working at, say, like Google search team, or maybe, I don't know, like programming at, Oracle.
Facebook or something. Yeah.
Amazon, sure. And straight up, she goes, I don't feel like Berkeley CS prepared me to work in the real world. And she said that her friend was so much better than her at coding by the time that she graduated. And she went to Cal Poly SLO, by the way, which is obviously a CSU. That she was like, if I were to do it all over again, I would have actually gone to SLO or a CSU instead to learn, because she felt like she said, I think I would have learned how to do it a lot more had I just gone to a CSU. So to prove your point, it's not something that I think you just experienced, but it's something that I've heard across the board, in that I think UCs are research institutions, right?
Right.
And so, if we have any, parents who are watching this, or if you're a student, that's fine. If you have a student, or if you are a student who's hands-on, who doesn't want to bother with too much theory and wants more just practical learning, right? I would say the CSU is the better fit for you. Right. If you go to a UC looking for hands-on learning, you can find it for sure, but it's probably not as easy to find that kind of learning, because these institutions are not meant for that. They're meant for researching stuff, right? Which is why we hear about Nobel Prizes coming out of UCs all the time, but not so much from CSUs. And that's not saying that CSUs are any less. It's just that that's just not the kind of institution a CSU is, right?
Right.
And so, just to kind of name a few programs that I identified at San Jose State, that exist not offered at the UC, to kind of, paint the picture, to show how I think CSUs are just a better example of hands-on learning and job, applicability. I'm going to list them in alphabetical order. There's advertising, art, digital art, animation, graphic design, aviation, which is really cool, business administration, which, by the way, is not always really offered at UCs. A lot of UCs offer like a managerial economics degree, which is really kind of not real business. Right. So in your case, you even had specializations, right? Like MIS, right? Management Information Systems, accounting, like there's all these kinds of things.
Oh, there's AIS, MIS. I think there's finance, marketing. There's like a whole series.
Yeah. There's communicative disorders and sciences, interesting. Hospitality, tourism, and event management. Industrial design, kinesiology, nursing, interesting. packaging, which I thought was super interesting. But if you think about how many people buy from Amazon and online nowadays, it makes sense that there's a degree just for that.
Right.
Public relations, recreation, and teaching credentials. For the most part, right, you can't find all of these. And that's a lot of programs. That's like, I think, something like 15 that you can't
At least
get.
a dozen, yeah.
Right. And that's just from San Jose State. Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I look somewhere else, I'll find even more. But that's, just a good list of things that you can't get at the UC system. So, I mean, do you know anybody who studied any of those, by the way?
Well, because I have a judo background, which, if you guys don't know, this is my plug-in for San Jose State. If you guys want to go to San Jose State. All right, this is my plug. All right, for all you kids out there, if you want to learn judo, go to San Jose State. They have the best judo program in the entire nation.
Wow.
Okay, like collegiate champs, Olympic champs, they all come out of San Jose State. That's my plug-in. All right. So I got my black belt from San Jose State. That's my plug-in. All right. I'm gonna put that out there. And most of these guys, they all major in kinesiology. Right. I don't think they offer that anywhere. I don't think they offer that at UCs.
Generally not at the UC system, no. Right. And I think you mentioned once before that you had a friend who studied aviation too, right? Is that right?
Yeah. I had a buddy who studied aviation, and they're also in the Air Force as well. So, wow. It just makes sense.
Right. Well, did that person eventually become a pilot? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Yeah. So talk about hands-on learning. So, the next thing, I mean, we've already alluded to it, but I might as well just kind of shout out some numbers. And you talked about judo, because I think you were able to find a sense of community, despite the fact that the CSUs are known for being commuter schools, right?
Right.
A couple of numbers, just it's kind of generally perceived as a con, meaning a downside of going to CSU, is that the students aren't living on campus, right? Because if I don't have to pay rent in the city of San Jose, which is, by the way, astronomically expensive, I'd rather just drive there. And if that means going into the traffic of 880 or planning my day a little bit better, I'll save the $15,000, $16,000 a year kind of thing, right?
Right.
So here's some numbers. SJSU, 84% of students are commuters, meaning they go to class, they go back home for the most part. Cal Poly SLO, much better, 65% are commuters. Pomona, 90% are commuters. Long Beach, 92% commuters. And San Diego State, SDSU, 77% commuters. So we're generally looking at 80, 90% of people going to class, going back home. Did you feel like that impacted your experience at all?
So I'm not going to lie, that did. Now, what I know right now at San Jose State, and I'm not sure if this is affecting all CSUs, but I know in San Jose State, and due to COVID, I think the rules have been changed, is that the first year of being a student at San Jose State, you have to pay for dorm. You have to pay for your dormitory fee, and you have to pay to actually stay at their dorms for 1 year, and then afterwards you can do whatever you want. If you're a transfer student, I think that's an exception.
Because you're entry as a junior, yeah, if you're transfer student.
But yeah, if you're an incoming freshman, then you have to dorm there for at least 1 year.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think the rules have changed due to COVID.
Sure, yeah.
But before, that was the case. So I think that was one way to get people to bond. And
well, did you feel like there were students who were just going to class and going back home? I mean, you commuted to San Jose State yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did that for sure. But everybody has their own different scenario. I just left home. I mean, I just left school because then I have work immediately afterwards, right? I have like 2 part-time jobs I have to do with. So after school, after class, I'll just go to work. And then since it's on the way and work ends at like 9 or 10, I'm not going to go back to campus. I might just go back home.
Makes sense. Right? Yeah. So despite that, you were able to find, or you were able to get involved. What were you involved in when you went to San Jose State? So you mentioned obviously you did judo, and that was pretty intense, right? Obviously, you eventually got your black belt there. Congrats on that. That's what was a journey.
Yeah.
And that allowed you to really build a network. I mean, can you talk a little bit more about that, and also, anything else you were involved in, or perhaps how else you built relationships from college?
I mean, judo was very much my saving grace on interacting with fellow college folks, so to speak, college students. I mean, those are like some of my best friends. You work out with each other. You guys are in a class, throw each other, you sweat with each other, and it's like camaraderie that you can't find anywhere else. Couple of friends that I still contacted today. At the time, we would schedule our classes around judo. We would find out, okay, what's our class? It's usually Tuesdays, Thursdays. I'm going to schedule everything around it. If the class doesn't fit, well, I'm going to move it to a different day. I'm just schedule all around it. And then we all do that. Every Tuesday, Thursday, we meet up, we work out, we stay there for like a couple hours. Sometimes if there's another class afterwards, another judo class, we'll just sit there and just chill and just talk all day. And that was like our, little club.
Yeah, I'm just starting to realize, I think no matter where you go, whether it's like a UC, an out of state, an Ivy League, or CSU, or whatever, even like a CC, like I would say that, the traditional college experience, right? Like the whole, like everyone's, living in this crazy place and exploring and experimenting and stuff. At the end of the day, I think your ability to really get a great experience anywhere depends on the kind of people you meet and the kind of activities you guys actually share. Like for you, it was judo, right? For me, it was like, I think it was doing a lot of business case competitions, but also like doing student government, which by the way, I never done before, right? Like in the history, like ever. Right. And, no matter kind of where I was, like if I found an activity that I really bonded, that allowed me to bond with other people, I was able to really have a really rich experience. And so, I feel like even though, like for instance, CSUs might be commuter schools, if you get involved in something, and by the way, this is true for everybody I know who went to CSUs, like if they were involved in some activity, whether it was like a business club or a fraternity, like a business fraternity or social fraternity, or whatever it was, like people had a really good time. And so, I'm just starting to realize that even though, I think CSUs do get a pretty bad rap on being commuter schools because the assumption is that everyone's going and then leaving. But the truth is like 10% of like 30,000 people is still a lot of people.
Yeah.
and that's the thing. All those people are staying there, right? And so, that's what, 3,000 people, if I'm not mistaken.
And to kind of bounce back on that as well, when we think commuter, I think there's also a misnomer to it in which we think commuter, your distance from school is like at least 30 minutes away, right? But even though that may be the case for me, that's not the case for a lot of people. When I say commuter, they're like living 3 blocks away from
right.
Right.
They live in San Jose, right? Like down the street.
Walk away from like
Long Beach or Pomona. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, that's a great point.
So I think we have to be careful on that too.
Yeah, I want to call out a couple of things. So, real quick, who is the CSU good for? Well, here's what I think. Parents who are looking for a very affordable option and practically guaranteed job training and job security for their kids, right? That's one. Students who are very hands-on learning, right? And less about the theory, less about the research component or the theoretical side of learners. They want to know how to use it. They want to use it in their learning, right? In fact, like Cal Poly SLO is an excellent example of this. Why it's known to be like that CSU everyone wants to apply for is because its motto is learn by doing. And it's very common in like a physics class to like not only learn the concept in like 5 or 10 minutes, and the teacher to then drag everybody to the lab and spend the next 45 or 50 or an hour just seeing how that concept actually works in real life. That's something that you don't usually see, So if you're a student who's like super into hands-on learning, CSUs have to be one of the strongest, players in the game. And at the cost, it's got to be better than say going to like say Philly for Temple or Pace University in New York and paying 4x more. Whether
or like UC San Diego, like down south, and it's like you got to pay extra more because it's a UC. I think it's like an extra 10 grand a year.
Yeah, right? I agree. Yeah. And so
to piggyback on that, so what I would say is to all the high school kids out there is that, so I'm gonna give a little story. So this during my last year, one of my last 2 classes I have to take for business administration, which we call strategic management. So those who don't know, it's more like kind of consultation and consulting kind of classes. And so my professor, who by the way is an actual consultant, I think he was a consultant for General Electric for like years, and then he retired in his like late 30s. And then he says, as a consultant, one of your jobs is to learn how to fire people, right? Your consultation job is to tell the company, okay, you have to lay off a bunch of people. And now, since I retired, I'm in my 40s, I'm gonna go back to school to teach and pay my due diligence or my payback to society to help these kids learn, hey, you can get laid off and this is what's going to happen to you, right? So he's telling all these stories. And so one thing he taught us is that, so interesting about him, so what he does, I believe there's a certain term for it, where there are certain professors where they teach from one college to another, right? And I forgot what the term is called, but what this
professors, they're adjunct professors.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So what he did was he taught at UC Davis for 1 week. By the way, it's a 1 day a week class. So it's there for like 3-4 hours. And then you sit there and then you're only there for like once a week. So he teaches at UC Davis for 1 week and then he teaches at San Jose State for the other week. And he'll tell us, I'd rather teach you guys and go teach at UC Davis.
Why was that?
His reasoning is because at UC Davis, a lot of the students there are chasing for the grade. They want to know, how do I get that A? Can I do extra credit? Can I do this to get that A? When he says, at San Jose State, what I love about you guys is you're not chasing for the grade. You're chasing for the content. You're chasing to find out, why is it that there's this thing as, the 4 P's of marketing? Why is it called the 4 P's and not anything else, right? Why do we have Sigma? Why do we have, by the way, these are all business terms, and then you can sort of understand what I'm doing with this, right? You guys ask intelligent questions about the content, not questions about how to get that A. You see what the difference is at? Yeah. And so that's where that idea what you're trying to expand on is. Are you training yourself to be prepared for what's out there rather than a more theory, rather than more study and writing a bunch of papers?
Yeah, that's deep. It's really powerful, and I think it's testament to what kinds of kids these schools attract, right? I mean, if you look at, say, like a Davis or Berkeley or LA, these are kids who were conditioned to prioritize grades over all else,
right?
Over learning, effectively. Yet, at the CSUs, you're surrounded. It sounds like, well, I'm sure not everyone's like this, but generally speaking, it sounds like what your professor has found, and he probably being a pretty good judge of this, having taught at both schools.
Right.
It sounds like people are more interested in learning, and so that's a great way, I think, to kind of, finish off the podcast, which is, if, again, I think let's really clarify the myth, right? Which is that CSUs are not as good as UCs. It's simply not true. And I think it's comparing apples to oranges. In fact, you can't even compare them, in my opinion, because CSUs are a completely different animal. They are designed to help prepare students for the work world, right? And that's in their philosophy and how they teach, and even in their personnel. UCs are designed to create, I would argue, budding researchers, critical thinkers, right? Can it prepare you for the work world? Absolutely. But It's not what their prime philosophy is. And so I think we have to rethink the whole prestige versus practicality kind of thing, and just say, look, when it comes to an education, we have to find what's the right fit for a student, right? In terms of their learning style, perhaps their budget, programs that are offered, right? As opposed to just shoving everybody towards the UCs because, I heard they're better, right?
Right.
So, really quickly before we wrap this whole thing up, I want to call out, U.S. News rankings, because I like to say numbers don't lie. My dad always used to say that. San Jose State, who should apply? Which CSU should you apply for? Well, let's go and clarify. For computer science and engineering, San Jose State is ranked 22. This is by U.S. News. 22. San Francisco State ranked 29. SLO ranked 3. CSU Long Beach ranked 14. And San Diego State ranked 65. For bio, San Jose State is 22. San Francisco State is 29. Cal Poly SLO is number 3. CSU Long Beach number 14. SDSU 65. And Monterey Bay is 25. Business, and this is your major, San Jose State is ranked 22 yet again. San Francisco is 29. Northridge ranked 40. Long Beach ranked 14. And San Diego State 65. So point is that these CSUs are in the top 30 to 50. This is insane. I mean, it's like when you compare them against some bigger schools, like, across the nation, they're better, and I think my last thought is that I think it's because many of them are located in job markets. And I think this is the last thing I want to mention is, if you why is going to San Jose State potentially more valuable than going to Riverside or UC Merced, or maybe even like a UC San Diego, is because you're located in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? And so if you go to San Jose State, if you go to San Francisco State, if you go to the job market, you're going to get hired. Whereas if you go to UIUC, middle of the cornfields in Illinois, if you go to UC Riverside, Orange County, AKA orange trees, right? A lot of farming out there. You're not in a job market, and you eventually have to find the job market. So, look, I think if we're being real, right, I think there's actually a serious case that if the priority is employability and job preparation, then CSUs actually might be better, just hands down, right? And so, it's funny because, when I talk to parents, they're very pragmatic about things, right? So it's like, well, from a logical standpoint, then shouldn't you just go to have your student go to CSU? And then the whole emotion comes in, right? Logic goes out the door. Then fear of missing out or the whole prestige factor comes in, and then all hell breaks loose. Now my kid has to go to a UC, and I think we have to think about this a little bit better. We have to understand what these things actually are instead of just saying, oh, UCs are better than CSUs, and I just don't think that's true. So anyway, I think we're running out of time here, but were there any final thoughts that you wanted to mention, Sevey?
What I would say is this: if I were to go back and go tell my old high school self, what advice I would give myself, I would say, have fun. Like, pick a college. And I understand, you want to go to a college so you can tailor a career, but at the same time, learn to have fun, right? You may not be in the situation of school that you really, really want to go to, but learn to have fun and, do the best, to have the most fun you can at the place that you're in, right? And you'll breeze it through and you'll realize, oh, it's not that big of a deal, right?
I completely agree. And if anybody's still here with us, all California residents, I would strongly consider applying or having your student apply to these 4: San Jose State, San Francisco State, because they're all here in Silicon Valley, breeding for opportunities. Northridge is a good one, and San Diego State are all good ones. And those are definitely places that you can have a lot of fun. Thanks, Sevey, for joining us today on this podcast, man. I really do appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing you again soon. I'm sure that's
I'll see you again, man.
Okay, great. See you later.
Later, man.